Hi, I'm Amy Edwards, and welcome to the Edwards Table. This podcast is all about real conversations, the kind that come from life, love, family, friendship, and all the messy, beautiful parts in between. I started this show because I believe in redemption stories and in sitting down together to talk about the things that shape us, heal us, and sometimes just make us laugh. So grab a seat, take a breath, and join me, because there's always room for you here at the Edwards Table. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Edwards Table. I am Amy Edwards, I'm your host, and today, if you are watching us on our YouTube channel, it definitely looks a lot different in terms of where I'm seated. If you're listening in, typically I do all of our taping, if you will. We do all of that from my kitchen table. And so if you joined us back in season 1, it was me and my daughter Maddie telling my story. And then if you've jumped in with us in season 2, we've welcomed my husband John to the table. So he and I have been talking through my story through his perspective of what he's lived with me, which is pretty much most of it. And so today, not sure when you're listening in. You may not be listening in real time as we put a new episode out every Wednesday, but 'tis the season of December. And right now, my kitchen table is definitely getting ready for the holidays, which is fabulous. And also, we have a lot of things going on in our business that John and I own. And so today I thought, you know what, I'm going to just take a pause and sit down and chat with you all today a little more. Obviously, it has to do with my story because it's about my life. But I've actually brought you into my sewing room. That's what this room in our house is called. I am seated in a rocking chair that I actually have thrown a blanket over because it is very old. It has been around a hot minute. It actually was in Maddie's nursery when she was born, and we brought her home. And it needs to be recovered. I mean, like, there are holes in it. It's very embarrassing. So also, it's like nursery themed. Didn't think that was necessarily what I wanted in my background today. But behind me, there's a piece of furniture over my right shoulder, your left, and this actually is a part of a bedroom suit that Maddie has. It's been passed down to her, and it's actually from John's grandmother on his father's side, which is a really cool piece. But she's got other pieces that go with this. Unfortunately, this one doesn't fit in her current living space. So as moms and dads do, we are keeping that for her until she has her own big girl spot, if you will. And she'll take that with her when she moves. But I brought you into my sewing room, one, because I had to, but then two, I thought it was kind of fitting, as this is a space in our home that I am privileged to have, because not every place that we've lived have I had my own room to be able to do things in. But I am someone who requires creativity. And so for many years, I did a lot of sewing. I actually hand sewed our children's clothes for like church clothes, dressy things like that. I did most of their church clothes starting when I was like 2, I started learning how to sew. And then I got into smocking and all of the things. And so I have supplies for that. I know if you've listened in, you heard about my wild times of scrapbooking. Hoo-hoo. So got some stuff for that. Learned knitting, know how to knit, got some stuff for that. So needless to say, if I'm not in my kitchen creating something yummy, then I'm definitely in my sewing room, finding a fun project to tinker with, if you will. But this is like an oasis for me. So it's a multi-purpose room. John built me this beautiful standing desk out of spelted pecan. And if you're, or spalted, not spelted, good heavens, spelt flour. See, in the baking mode I am. Spalted pecan, which is my favorite wood right now. It's gorgeous. Definitely Google it and look at some pictures. But the spalting is actually caused, I think he told me, like by bugs and critters that have lived in the tree, and it causes these little fine black lines to run through the wood grain, and it just gives it this unique character. It's so beautiful, but it's also not normally found. Like it's actually an unusual version of the wood because not every tree has it. And so I'm sure because I turn everything into a story, or like I love all of the reasoning behind all of that, is why I'm drawn to that kind of wood. I don't know, but so I'm actually seated around that. I have another table in here where I have things laid out. And right now, if I'm honest, if I were to like scan this room, it is a hot mess. There is no other way to explain it. We've got Christmas wrapping in parts. We've got fall decorations in other parts. Y'all, it's like the middle of December. It's ridiculous, but you know what? Business is good. John's health is good, thank goodness. But we were down with him not being able to really work normal for probably about 2 weeks. And so it really put us behind what we would normally be doing during the holiday season. So I would have already had my tree up. I would already have my house decorated and all of these things. Ironically, in 2 days, I have a group of ladies coming to be celebrated. I am putting on a little Christmas soiree for them, and I don't have the first thing up for Christmas because John hasn't been able to like lift down the buckets and things. So all the prayers. By the time you're listening to this, it will have already happened, and I'm sure we'll have things to make it feel Christmassy, but maybe not quite to the extent I would normally have. So in the spirit of thinking about, I know a couple episodes ago, I sat down with you all individually, by myself, not individually. Obviously, I'm not reaching out to each individual one of you. But I sat down and I kind of talked you through, going through hard times and how in the world did I deal with that. And it was so funny today. Well, not really haha, more ironic funny. John and I, we go to a church not far from our home, and we volunteer there as well. And my team that I lead are the hospitality team. And so we make sure, everybody's loved on as they come in the doors with some hot coffee. And then we take care of all of our volunteers with snacks and drinks as well. And then because of our church setup right now, we're a temporary campus, meaning we set up and tear down every single week. And so with that, then there are other responsibilities. He actually oversees our parking lot team. So he greets everybody as they're coming in and make sure that cones are up so there are no like horrific accidents in the parking lot. We have flags and banners and things that go up as well. So we tend to stay busy there. But while we were at church today, we got to pop in and listen to our pastor, and he was talking about just this season of holding on to things and letting them go, right? The act of forgiveness, if you will. And it has really struck a chord with me. I get questions from you all, and if you haven't followed us on social media, we're at the Edwards Table. Just search us up in whatever social media app you're in. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're in all of those places. And I'll put posts up, and sometimes you'll see more personal information there that you don't necessarily get to hear here on the podcast. But I was in, John and I went in and we were listening and just thinking about, well, I already said that part, but thinking about a question that I get asked a whole lot, and I do mean a lot. A lot of people ask me about this, and that is, Amy, how have you forgiven people in your life that have done some horrible things to you, like awful things to you? And I was really thinking about it today, obviously, because our pastor, Pastor Kim, was speaking about that and talking about the fact that, he did this really cool visual with a cup, and it was just a little coffee cup sized, like paper cup. And he held it out in front of him. And the gist of it was, to hold it for 2 minutes, maybe a little uncomfortable, but very doable. 2 hours, really, you'll start to feel it, but still doable. 24 hours, things start really getting painful. But reality is when you let it go, then you're free. You're free to go about your way, right? And so thinking about that and getting asked the question over and over again, I guess what I would say is this: how I forgive for some of the things that have happened in my life. So if you've not been along for this part, I would definitely encourage you, if you want to hear just a killer story of like wild things plus all kinds of redemption in the mix, definitely go back and listen to season 1. And then here in the beginning of season 2 is when John's come to the table and kind of talk through his side of like what he's experienced, what he was dealing with, or whatever was going on from his vantage point. And so I come from a childhood of abuse. I have a very messy story in terms of decisions I've made. So I had an abortion. I spent many years of just feeling guilty and very ashamed of myself, knowing that I'd made the wrong decision by doing that. And just a very volatile relationship, I would say, with my mother. And so in the past. And so how did I forgive people? And let me say this: I am not a perfect human being. I know for some of you that might be shocking. Ha ha ha. Not even close. I am beyond off the list of perfection. Like, I'm at the bottom of the perfect list. I'm like Hot Mess Express, making all the mistakes. I'm your girl. And if you're familiar with the Bible, I tend to relate of the disciples. I'm more of Camp Peter, like I love Jesus and cuss a little kind of a gal. Not gonna lie. But all this to say, in the mix of being someone who truly loves the Lord and really wants to be more and more like Him, it's learning the art of forgiveness. And I say the art of because in my experience, life never stops and people do hurt us along the way. And sometimes it's a little hurt, like you hurt my feelings, or I didn't really like the way that situation played out or whatever, versus also really big things, people shutting you out of their lives, people abusing you, or, stealing from you, or, the list can go on, right? And so in terms of forgiveness for me, for some situations in my life, it comes in and out where I have to choose to forgive again. I would love to say that I'm really good at forgiveness, but it's just a battle I'm really willing to, I guess, engage in, if you will. Like, I'm willing to get up and say, I choose forgiveness. It's kind of like love to me. Don't get me wrong, there is an emotional side to love, and there is like, the ushy gushy feelings kind of a love, but love, as in the kind of love I'm talking about, is showing up unconditionally, no matter what others are doing or saying to you, how they're treating you, and whatever else. And so forgiveness, I feel, is a similar thing, in that when we forgive, it truly is, I think, for the big things, for me, it's a process. So it might take me some time, and I'm not talking a few minutes, I'm talking months, sometimes years, of just kind of reiterating that, yes, I forgive this person. It doesn't mean I accept what they've done. It doesn't mean that I ignore what they've done. It means that I acknowledge this person wronged me and I forgive them. So today, when I was listening to the message that was being spoken, the visual that kind of pops into my head, and I don't know if you're like this, but I get pictures or little video clips in my head when people talk. I'm a very visual human being, so also you can calm down on all the gore and guts. I don't want to hear about all that because I actually see it when you talk about it. So there's that fun little tittle. No, but I was thinking about this today. Forgiveness is kind of like, here in Texas, we have these great big interstate systems, and there are these gigantic flyovers, is what I call them, overpasses, if you will. They're like a big old bridge over, a city street or some land or whatever. And I think that's the visual that I get when it comes to forgiveness, right? Like when you're driving in your car and you're on the interstate and you go up and over a flyover, you still can see the what has happened below you, right? Like you can see it as you go past it. As you go over it, though, it truly does become a part of your past. It's not something that comes with you because you're moving ahead, right? So forgiveness, very much that. And there are situations for me in my life that the act of forgiveness is something that I have done. And I also had to do a few other things in order to put those situations, circumstances, actions, whatever it was, actually down below in the past, away from me, to be able to move forward, to be able to move on with my life, to be able to go without being attached to the constant pain or the constant stress or whatever it is coming from those things. And so I think the visual of that flyover for me was a really good one, because even though, albeit in Texas, we're usually doing about 75, 85 miles an hour, all legal on the stop or on the speed limit signs. For those of you not familiar, we go really fast here. But I'm not necessarily moving that quickly when I am forgiving people, because there is a process of healing, of wound cleaning, if you will. So, for instance, let me give you a big fat for instance. So, my father was someone who sexually molested me. And I say it now and it may sound kind of flippant, and please don't take it that way. That's not my intent at all. However, that happened when I was a little girl, and I did take action in order to forgive him for that. And one of the big things that I did is I sought professional counseling, because when John and I talked about it, it made him very angry that someone would ever mistreat me, much less a little girl. And he could not wrap his head around it. And so for him, his immediate response is anger. And do I need to go to jail for this? You know, kind of a situation. We are not going to jail. I jokingly will say we have an amazing prison ministry at our church, but nobody wants to be on that side of the plexiglass if we can avoid it. So in order for me to heal from that, forgiveness was necessary. It's necessary to forgive someone in order to move forward, right? Well, how in the world are you going to say, okay, I'm going to forgive my dad, who also, P.S., and by the way, molested me as a child? Well, that's a great question, with not a simple answer, but an honest answer. And that is, I sought counsel. So I went to professional counseling, and my counselor was amazing. She and I worked together for a couple of years, actually, because of that abuse that also wove into other parts of my life. And so just getting an understanding for what had happened, that it indeed was not my fault. I didn't do anything as a little girl to entice my father into that behavior, which is something I carried for a very long time. I felt responsible for that. I felt there was obligation in the fact that I did something to make that happen. And so she helped me work through that and understand that, no, that's not your decision. It was not your choice. You were innocent in that. You were just a little girl. But then also gave me some tools to use, if you will, when the thoughts or things would creep into my mind. So when I entered into my young 20s and became a mom, for instance, which is one of the things I've always wanted to be a mom, and would have loved to have had like a bajillion kids, like as many as I physically could, which I did. I had my 2 physically and my 4 babies in heaven. But I was petrified that I was going to carry forward that behavior. And so when I found out I was pregnant with Quinn, there were many times where I was distraught, because I was like, what if I don't have self-control? What if I you know, decide that that is what I want to be, or I don't know. I had wild thoughts about it. And so thankfully, going to that professional counseling and asking, oh, excuse me, asking for my therapist to help, work me through this, like, goodness gracious. And what I came to learn about that was part of my difficulty was I hadn't forgiven my father yet. And with that, I carried all that emotional baggage. And so she and I worked together, and I was able to truly make peace with the fact that, yes, it did happen. No, I did not have any responsibility. No, there was nothing I could have done to change the outcome of the situation. And I'm still an amazing human being because of who made me and how he wired me. And with all of that came forgiving my father. So one of the things I'm sure any of you are out there have either been to counseling or you've heard, I'm sure, in like TikTok videos and things like that, is, writing a letter to your abuser. Because the reality is you don't get closure from that situation. There is no magic anything. It's like anything else in life. Anything that's fast and free is cheap and heartbreaking. Like you're not going to get off easy in terms of that. Closure for abuse for me became unnecessary. And I think that was the beautiful part of forgiveness, was that was my closure. My closure was there was nothing my father could ever say to me. Sorry, really? There are no words. There's no explanation for that behavior. There's no like making it right, if you will, with words. That is an actions kind of a situation when it comes to whether you're sorry or not. It would take a lot of actions, and it would take years of actions. And if I'm honest, in that situation with that kind of behavior, I'm not one that really wants to sit around to find out whether or not it's going to come to fruition or if I'm going to be heartbroken again. So the act of forgiveness for me was huge in my closure with that chapter of my life. And the beautiful thing about it is, I believe in our life story, is that because we forgive, like I said before, it's not saying that what the person did was okay. And it's not saying that what the person did was not a big deal. And it's not to say that what the person did isn't horrible. It's all of those things. But what it is being able to let it go, because it is truly something that has happened. And in terms of restoration in your own heart and potentially in a relationship, that's one of those things truly that only God can do. And I know, John and I may wear y'all out with that, and sorry, not sorry. It's vital to forgive people, and it's imperative to have God in the middle, because what he can do is restore all of it. And not only does God restore, but he redeems. And that's so powerful, because restoration versus redemption, restoring, right? Putting it back to right. It doesn't mean back to original. It means back to right. Great. That's restored. But redeemed is taking something that's been restored and making it something even better than what it was before. So when I talk about that value in forgiveness, it truly is the quintessential piece of the redemption of my story. And so I don't know. I thought about y'all today as I sat in church and I listened to our pastor talk about how important it is to let go. And here lately, our lives have been turned upside down with a variety of different things. And there are people in our lives that have hurt us. And we struggle with that. There are times where I want to be like a 3-year-old and pitch my fever fit and stamp my feet and whine and carry on, because that just feels like the right thing in the moment. And I am honestly a grown adult woman, and that would be inappropriate behavior. However, what I find is that forgiveness takes repetition. It takes practice. And when we're not good at something, that is always when God gives us more to practice with until we learn what it is He needs us to know. And it's ironic to say that out loud, because I've had to literally look at myself in the mirror and keep telling myself the same thing over and over and over again. And I think the flip side to forgiveness, when we're trying to give it to someone, right, is remember this: there are just as many people out in the world that are having to forgive you and me for things that we've said and done to them along the way. And please don't hear me saying that y'all are out there abusing your kids. I'm not saying that. But like, let's be real. All of us say things that we shouldn't say to people, or we have a really strong facial expression or body language. Mine typically is very loud, my body language. I'm a fix your face kind of a girl. Even though I may not say anything, you can definitely tell my emotions are on my face. So I think about that, and it's a daily grind of choosing forgiveness over holding on to anger, holding on to hurt, holding on to frustration, holding on to, wrong doing towards you. The forgiveness is not for them. It's truly for you, truly for me. Like, it takes the burden off of us, because no longer do we hold on to it. We're not carrying it around with us all the time and allowing it to cause us more and more and more pain, right? The longer you hold it, the harder it is to heal, the longer it takes to heal, because you wind up in so much pain, and it's just agony. I mean, and who wants to live that, y'all? Like, not me. Not me. The world is crazy enough without being part of the crazy, for me anyway. So this is what I wanted to share with y'all today, is the whole idea of this forgiveness business and what that really means, and how in the world do you do that? Like I said, it's not that it's hard per se. It can be painful. Sometimes holding on to things that hurt us becomes our normal, and we get fearful of letting go and forgiving someone because we're not really sure how to act next, because we've been doing it for so long. We've been carrying this with us for so long, this baggage, if you will. So I just would love to encourage y'all, if you're like me and you have had people in your past do some pretty rotten, horrible things to you, big or small, forgive them. As it is this time of the year, holidays, like I said, the last time it was just you and me, can be tough, can bring out some ickiness. And I find that being able to say that I have forgiven someone for wrongdoing to me is a very freeing experience. It definitely feels better. And in terms of being able to do it, if you find yourself in a spot where no matter what you do, you just still are feeling the hurt and the anger and the frustration, you can sit, I'm just going to tell you, you can sit down and have a conversation with someone. But I can tell you this, from my personal experience, when it comes to someone being abusive and you wanting to right that wrong in terms of having a conversation, there aren't words. There literally is nothing they can say to you. It truly is an actionable thing that they're going to have to act out and show and prove. And so the letter for me, sitting down, writing a letter to my father, telling him all the things that abuse caused me as not only a little girl, but as an adult woman. And then taking that letter, I read it out loud to myself, and then I took that letter and I ripped it up into a million pieces and I threw it away. And for the first time, I think because I actually saw it on paper, the ramifications of what happened to me were real. Because I didn't say this, and I apologize early on in our conversation today, but I wasn't believed by many that this had happened to me. And so there were many, many years where I even questioned, did this even happen to you, Amy? Like, because of the memories I do have versus the memories I don't have, and gaps and holes in my story and whatever else, it made me really question when I would go to someone who I should be able to trust and they don't trust that I'm telling the truth. And so that's a whole nother layer of forgiveness that had to be given on my part, was to my family or friends or whomever it was that didn't accept that as truth and didn't support me in that. So yeah, y'all, this time of the year, like I said, hard times can be had because the holidays tend to bring out the crazy behavior out of everyone. I know, obviously, when alcohol's involved, lips get really loose with what they like to say. That liquid courage, as some people call it, definitely works well. And drinking tends to pick up during the holidays. And so, words can be spoken and things can be said that not necessarily are appropriate or should be said any time, much less the holidays. I know for many of you, loss is part of your holidays as well. And so I just think about what's another way that we can live these holidays, like our pastor said, peacefully. Like, it's peaceful, not quiet, not tranquil, but peaceful, where your heart is not just constantly churning and just not feeling good about where you are and what's going on and whatever else. Being able to forgive someone goes a very long way to making amends to those situations. So, yeah, I don't want to drone on, but I definitely want to encourage any of you out there who might be struggling with loved ones or not loved ones, who have done some things, said some things to you that you need to forgive them for. I would encourage you to do that. Typically, forgiveness opens up when it's something that you're able to, I'm not talking abuse, but like if you've had a falling out with someone, being the person to say, I forgive them for that. And then let your actions speak to that. You be the first one to call or text and reach out and go grab coffee or go grab dinner or go drop a little happy off at their door, whatever that looks like. But I would highly recommend it, because a spirit of peace versus a spirit of unrest, take peace every day. Every day. Well, y'all, in the meantime, I'm going to turn you loose and let you go do your thing today. I truly hope that whatever life is bringing your way, that every week we'll be here at the Edwards table or sewing room, depending on what's going on in my house. But every week, each Wednesday, I'll have something out there for you guys. And stay tuned, because John Edwards and I will be back at the table here real soon. We've got some more conversations to be had. I think the last time y'all checked in with us last week, we talked through foster care and what fostering was for him and what that looked like from his perspective. But a couple of other stories that we'll tell and talk about. And then we got some fun things we're going to do too. So definitely follow us on the socials. If you stuck around here, if you're on YouTube, definitely give us a subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Anywhere you follow us, make sure to leave us comment. You can message us, DM me, all the things. I am always on social, checking all the things, and I love to hear from y'all. This past week, I was blown away with the number of messages I received and just the encouragement that I've been given. So to any of you who have reached out, I'm going to just shout you out and say thank you. Thank you so much, because there are days where this is hard to sit down and, one, want to actually feel like I'm naked out in the middle of Times Square telling all my business. And two, does it really touch lives? Is it really making an impact? Because that's my prayer. If we're touching the life of one, and God can encourage you through my story and through my wackadoodle ways of doing things, then I am delighted. It makes everything that we do here absolutely worth it. So in the meantime, just know this: at the Edwards table, there is always a seat for you here, and I cannot wait to jump back in next week. Y'all take care, and we'll see you then.